The drill bit screamed against crystalline rock as Dr. Park Hyun wiped sweat from his forehead. 3 months of digging into the planet Kepler 442b had led to this moment. The massive crystal formation they had discovered was unlike anything in the galactic databases. "The readings are off the charts," said his assistant Lee Soo, staring at her scanner with wide eyes. "Whatever is inside this thing has been here for over 1,000 years. Park Hyun nodded and adjusted his mining laser to a lower setting. The crystal was beautiful but strange. It pulsed with a soft blue light that seemed to have its own heartbeat. Through the semi-transparent surface, they could see something massive inside. "It looks like some kind of creature," whispered Dr. Choi Min, the research station coordinator who had flown down from orbit to witness the discovery. "But the size readings cannot be correct. Nothing could be that large." The crystal shell was nearly 50 meters tall and twice as wide. Whatever slept inside filled the entire space. As Park Hyun made the final cuts, the blue light grew brighter and the pulsing increased. "Everyone step back," he ordered, though his own curiosity kept him close to the crystal. "We have no idea what we are dealing with here." The crystal cracked with a sound like thunder. Blue light poured out through the growing fractures. The ground beneath their feet began to shake. Equipment fell off tables in the nearby research tent. Lee Soo grabbed onto a support post to keep from falling. Then the crystal exploded outward. The creature that emerged was beyond anything they had imagined. It was a dragon, but not like the small flying lizards from Earth legends. This beast was enormous. Its head alone was the size of a small building. Scales covered its body in patterns of deep purple and gold, though they looked dull and lifeless. But something was very wrong with this dragon. "By the stars!" gasped Choi Min. "It is so fat." The dragon was indeed massively overweight. Its belly dragged on the ground as it tried to lift itself up. Rolls of fat hung from its neck and limbs. Its wings, which should have been powerful enough to carry it through space, looked too small for its bloated body. The creature opened its eyes. They were deep red like burning coals, but seemed tired and confused. It tried to roar, but only managed a weak groan that sounded more pitiful than frightening. "Hello," said Park Hyun carefully, activating his universal translator. "Can you understand us?" The dragon's massive head turned toward the small human. For a moment, its eyes showed surprise. Then it spoke, its voice entering their minds through the translator device. "Tiny creatures. How long have I slept? The galaxy feels different now." "Over 1,000 years," replied Park Hyun. "We found you buried deep in this planet's crust." "What are you?" The dragon attempted to rise to its full height, but collapsed back down with a heavy thud that shook the ground. Its breathing was labored and shallow. "I am Valeth the World Eater. I have consumed entire civilizations. Fleets of lesser dragons once followed my commands across the stars." The dragon's mental voice carried a note of pride, but also confusion. "Why do I feel so weak? Why does my body feel so heavy?" Lee Soo checked her medical scanner and whispered to Park Hyun. "Its metabolic readings show extreme obesity. Whatever hibernation process it used seems to have stored energy as fat rather than maintaining muscle mass." The dragon tried again to stand, but managed only to lift its head a few meters off the ground before exhaustion forced it back down. "This cannot be. I was once the terror of 1,000 worlds. I could fly between stars and crush planets with my bare claws." That may have been true once," said Dr. Choi Min diplomatically. "But your body has changed during your long sleep. You appear to have gained significant weight." Veleth's eyes flashed with anger. "Impossible. I am perfection incarnate. I am power itself." He tried to spread his wings, but they barely extended halfway before the effort became too much. "What has happened to me?" Park Hyun stepped closer, though he stayed well out of reach of the dragon's massive claws. "Your species may have biological processes we do not understand. But from what we can observe, your muscle mass has been replaced by fat storage during hibernation." "Fat storage?" Valeth repeated the words with disgust. "I do not store fat. I burn worlds." "When did you last eat a proper meal?" asked Li Su, "or exercise your flying muscles?" The dragon was silent for a long moment. I entered the crystal sleep after the Great War ended. The galaxy had become boring. All civilizations were either destroyed or hiding. There were no more worlds to conquer, no more species to terrorize. I decided to sleep until worthy prey emerged again. "And during this sleep your body changed," said Park Hyen gently. "Without regular movement or proper nutrition, your muscle turned to fat. This is common in many species during extended hibernation." Valeth tried once more to lift himself up. This time he managed to rise partially before. His arms gave out. He crashed back down with a frustrated growl. "This is humiliating. I who once made galaxies tremble cannot even stand properly." Within hours, news of the discovery had reached the Galactic Council. Emergency sessions were called. Ancient records were consulted. The name Valeth the World Eater appeared in historical documents as one of the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever known. "We cannot simply let this creature fly free," declared Council Leader Zeth during the emergency broadcast. "But we also cannot destroy what may be the last of its species. The creature appears unable to cause immediate harm in its current condition," reported Dr. Choi Min via subspace communication. "It can barely move under its own weight." "But what happens when it regains its strength?" asked another council member. Ancient dragon species were known for their regenerative abilities. Given time and proper conditions, it could return to its former power. The debate continued for days while Valeth remained on the planet's surface, growing more frustrated with his physical limitations. He demanded food, but everything they offered seemed to disagree with his changed metabolism. He tried repeatedly to fly, but could not even lift his bulk off the ground. Finally, the Galactic Council reached a decision. That surprised everyone. "We are assigning a specialist to assess the creature's rehabilitation potential," announced Council Leader Zeth. "If this dragon can be trained to use its power responsibly, it could become an asset rather than a threat." "What kind of specialist?" asked Park Hyen during the next communication session. "A human physical trainer named Kim Tae. He has successfully rehabilitated beings that others considered hopeless cases. If anyone can get this ancient predator back in shape, it would be him." Valeth listened to this conversation through the translation device. His eyes showed a mixture of curiosity and indignation. "A trainer. You would assign me a trainer like some domestic animal that needs discipline." "Not discipline," said Park Hyen carefully. "Help. If you truly wish to regain your former abilities, you will need guidance from someone who understands physical conditioning." The dragon was quiet for a long time, staring up at the alien stars. Finally, he spoke again. "Very well. Bring me this human trainer, but know this, tiny creatures. I am Valeth the World Eater. I have existed since before your species learned to make fire. This trainer of yours had better be impressive, or I may decide to eat him first." Despite his threats, everyone could see the desperation in the ancient dragon's eyes. For the first time in over a millennium, Valeth was facing a challenge he could not simply destroy. And deep down, he knew he needed help. The transport ship landed on Kepler 442b 3 days after the Galactic Council's decision. Kim Tae stepped out wearing simple workout clothes and carrying a small bag of equipment. He was not what anyone expected. "That is the famous trainer?" asked Dr. Choi Min, watching the short, muscular human walk toward their research camp. "He looked so ordinary." Kim Tae was indeed ordinary looking. Average height, average build, with graying hair and kind eyes. But Li Su had researched his background and found records of impossible transformations. He had helped beings lose hundreds of pounds, trained disabled veterans to compete in galactic athletics, and even worked with hostile alien species. "Do not judge by appearances," she warned. "This human has a reputation for achieving the impossible." Kim Tae approached the massive dragon without fear. Valeth lay in the same position he had been stuck in for days, too heavy to move properly. The dragon's red eyes followed the small human with interest and suspicion. "So, you are my trainer," Valeth spoke through the mental translator. "You are smaller than I expected." Are you certain you can handle someone of my size and power? Kim Tae walked around the dragon slowly, examining him from every angle. He made notes on a digital pad and occasionally nodded to himself. Valeth grew increasingly uncomfortable under this silent inspection. Well? Demanded the dragon. What is? Your assessment, tiny human. Kim Tae finally spoke, his voice calm and matter-of-fact. You are in terrible shape. Your muscle mass has decreased by approximately 70%. Your cardiovascular system is severely compromised. Your flexibility is almost zero. Your wingspan to body weight ratio makes flight impossible. The dragon's eyes flashed with anger. How dare you speak to me with such disrespect? I am Valeth the World Eater. Right now, you are Valeth that cannot move without help, replied Kim Tae without emotion. Your reputation means nothing if you cannot back it up with ability. Valeth tried to lunge at the human, but only managed to lift his head a few inches, before collapsing back down. The effort left him breathing heavily. That just proved my point, said Kim Tae. A creature of your size should be able to move gracefully. Instead, you are trapped by your own body weight. Dr. Park Hyon watched nervously as the tension grew between trainer and dragon. Perhaps we should start with something less confrontational. He suggested. No, said Kim Tae firmly. He needs to understand his current reality before we can work on improving it. The trainer pulled out a small device from his bag. It projected a holographic display showing various fitness measurements. These are your current statistics compared to what they should be for a healthy dragon of your species, Kim Tae explained. Strength, 20% of normal. Endurance, 15%. Flexibility, 10%. Speed, 5%. Valeth stared at the numbers in shock. This cannot be accurate. It is completely accurate, said Kim Tae. I have worked with many species, and I have never seen such a dramatic decline in physical condition. But I am still dangerous, protested. Valeth, my claws can still tear through metal. My fire can still melt stone. Kim Tae activated his personal energy shield and walked directly up to one of Valeth's massive claws. Try to scratch me. The dragon attempted to swipe at the human, but his movements were so slow and weak that Kim Tae easily stepped aside. The claw scraped harmlessly against the ground. Your reflexes are too slow, observed Kim Tae. Your muscle coordination is poor. Any trained fighter could avoid your attacks. Valeth's humiliation was complete. The mighty World Eater had been reduced to a sluggish, oversized lizard who could not even catch a small human standing right in front of him. What do you want from me? Asked Valeth quietly. I want you to admit that you need help, said Kim. Tae, I want you to commit to following my training program completely, and I want you to stop living in the past. The dragon was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. What would this training involve? Kim Tae smiled for the first time since arriving. First, we work on basic movement. You need to rebuild your core muscles before we can attempt anything advanced. He demonstrated a simple stretching exercise, extending his arms and legs in a coordinated pattern. Copy this movement. Valeth attempted the stretch but could barely lift his limbs. After 30 seconds, he was exhausted and shaking. Pathetic, he muttered. Everyone starts somewhere, said Kim Tae. Even I was weak once. The difference is that I was willing to work to become stronger. Over the following days, Kim Tae put Valeth through the most basic exercises imaginable. Simple stretches, gentle movements, and breathing exercises. For a creature who had once terrorized galaxies, it was deeply humbling. Lee Su helped document the dragon's progress, which was painfully slow. After a week of training, Valeth could barely hold a basic stretch for more than a minute. This is hopeless, complained the dragon during one particularly difficult session. I am not improving at all. You are improving, insisted Kim Tae. Last week you could not lift your head for more than 30 seconds. Today you held it up. For 5 minutes. 5 minutes, scoffed Valeth. I once flew for days without rest. And you will again, if you continue training, said Kim Tae. But first you must master these basic movements. The breakthrough came during the second week. Kimte challenged Valeth to a simple contest. I will perform a series of exercises, said the trainer. If you can complete them better than I can, I will admit that you are ready for advanced training. Veleth's pride was immediately engaged. A contest between us, very well, human. Prepare to be humbled. Kimte began with push-ups. He completed 50 in perfect form, his movements smooth and controlled. Then he demonstrated sit-ups, jumping jacks, and a series of stretches that showed remarkable flexibility for someone his age. Your turn, said Kimte. Valeth attempted the push-ups first. He managed to lower his massive body halfway before his arms gave out. He crashed to the ground with a thud that shook the entire research camp. The sit-ups were even worse. Valeth could not even lift his upper body off the ground. His belly was too large and his core muscles too weak. I cannot do this, he admitted, his voice filled with shame. Now you understand, said Kimte gently. Your body has forgotten how to move properly. But bodies can remember if we teach them slowly and patiently. From that day forward, Valeth approached his training with new determination. He no longer complained about the simple exercises. He listened carefully to Kimte's instructions and followed them exactly. Dr. Choi Min observed the sessions with amazement. The dragon's attitude has completely changed, she reported to the Galactic Council. He actually seems eager to learn. This trainer is remarkable, agreed Dr. Park Hyun. He has accomplished more in 2 weeks than we thought possible. But Kimte knew the real work was just beginning. Breaking down Veleth's pride had been the first step. Now came the long, difficult process of rebuilding his body from the ground up. We have a very long way to go, he told Li Su privately. But for the first time, I believe this dragon might actually make it back to his former strength. Valeth, exhausted from another training session, overheard this comment. For the first time in 1,000 years, he felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. 6 months had passed since Kimte began training Valeth. The ancient dragon had lost nearly half of his excess weight, but he was still far from his former glory. His scales had begun to show their original luster, shifting from dull purple to vibrant amethyst in the sunlight. Your flight muscles are finally developing properly, observed Kimte as he watched Valeth practice wing extensions. But you still need to build more strength before attempting actual flight. Valeth nodded, no longer offended by the trainer's honest assessments. He had learned to respect Kimte's expertise even if his pride still stung from the constant reminders of his weakness. Dr. Hanji arrived from the medical station with a new dietary plan. She was a nutrition specialist who had studied the eating habits of dozens of alien species. The problem with your current diet, she explained to Valeth, is that you are still eating like you are in hibernation. Your body needs different nutrients. Now that you are active again. Valeth looked sadly at his meal of processed energy bars and synthetic proteins. I miss the taste of fresh starship fuel, he admitted, and the occasional asteroid rich in rare minerals. We can incorporate some of those elements, said Dr. Hanji, but in much smaller quantities and balanced with other nutrients your body needs for muscle growth. The new diet was harder to follow than the exercises. Valeth had to give up many of his favorite foods and learn to eat smaller portions more frequently. His appetite had been enormous during hibernation, but now he needed to eat for performance rather than storage. This is more difficult than rebuilding my strength, complained Valeth as he reluctantly consumed a meal of carefully balanced nutrients. Diet is often the hardest part of physical transformation, agreed Kimte, but it is also the most important. You cannot build muscle without proper fuel. Yunda, the logistics coordinator, had been working to expand the training facility. The original space was too small for a dragon of Veleth's size, even in his current reduced state. New equipment had been installed, including aerial obstacle courses suspended high above the ground. These challenges will help you rebuild your flight coordination, explained Kimte as he showed Valeth the complex series of hoops and platforms. But first you must be able to achieve sustained flight. Valeth looked up at the obstacles with longing. I remember when I could navigate asteroid fields at tremendous speeds. Now I can barely glide for a few meters. Your progress has been remarkable, Kim Tae reminded him. 6 months ago, you could not even stand. Now you can walk, run short distances, and achieve brief gliding flight. It was true. Valeth had transformed dramatically from the bloated, helpless creature they had found in the crystal. His movements were becoming more graceful, his reflexes sharper, and his endurance much improved, but the real test came when pirates attacked the research station. The alarm system screamed as 3 unmarked ships descended from orbit. Their scanners had detected the presence of a legendary dragon, and they saw an opportunity for profit. Ancient dragons were worth billions on the black market. All personnel to emergency shelters, ordered Dr. Choi Min over the communication system. This is not a drill. The pirates landed near the research camp and deployed armed troops. They had energy weapons and battle armor designed for capturing large creatures alive. "Where is the dragon?" demanded their leader, a scarred alien with cybernetic implants. "We know you have Valeth the World Eater here." Valeth heard the commotion and emerged from the training facility. The sight of the famous dragon, even in his reduced state, made the pirates pause in amazement. "By the void," whispered one of them, "it is really him." "He looks smaller than the legends claim," observed another pirate. "Still worth a fortune," said their leader. "Deploy the capture nets." Valeth felt rage building inside him. These criminals dared to threaten the humans who had helped him. Kim Tae and the research team had shown him kindness and respect, something he had not experienced in centuries. "You will not harm these people," Valeth declared, his mental voice carrying ancient authority. The pirates laughed. "What are you going to do about it, Fat Dragon? The Great World Eater cannot even fly properly anymore." Valeth tried to launch himself at the pirates, but his current physical condition betrayed him. He managed only a short, clumsy leap before crashing to the ground. The pirates easily avoided his attack. "Pathetic," sneered their leader. The mighty Valeth reduced to a harmless pet. Kim Tae emerged from the emergency shelter, despite orders to stay hidden. "Get away from him," shouted at the pirates. "A human trainer," laughed the pirate leader. "You have done good work making the dragon more manageable. We will pay you well for your services." "I will never work for criminals," replied Kim Tae firmly. "Then you will die with the rest of them," said the pirate, raising his weapon. Valeth watched in horror as the pirates threatened Kim Tae. The human had dedicated months of his life to helping the dragon recover. He had shown patience, respect, and genuine care for Valeth's well-being. "No," roared Valeth, struggling to his feet. "I will not let you hurt him." But even his anger could not overcome his physical limitations. The pirates deployed their capture nets, and Valeth found himself entangled in energy fields designed to hold creatures many times stronger than his current condition allowed. "Secure the dragon," ordered the pirate leader, "and eliminate the witnesses." The situation seemed hopeless until security forces from the nearby space station arrived. The pirates had not expected such a quick response, and they found themselves outgunned and surrounded. "Retreat," shouted their leader. "We will return with more ships." As the pirates fled, Valeth lay on the ground wrapped in their abandoned capture nets. The energy fields had been designed to suppress his strength. Leaving him helpless and humiliated, Kim Tae helped free the dragon from the nets, working carefully to avoid the residual energy charges. "I failed," said Valeth quietly. "I could not protect you or the others. I am still too weak." "You tried to defend us," replied Kim Tae. "That shows character. Your body will catch up to your courage with more training." But what if they return?" "Before I am ready," asked Valeth. "What if my weakness puts you all in danger again?" Kim Tae looked at the dragon with understanding. "Then we train harder, we push your limits further, and we make sure you are ready for the next challenge." That night, Valeth stared up at the alien stars and made a decision. He would not simply train to regain his former strength. He would train to become something better than he had been before. "Kim Tae," he called to the trainer, "I want to increase my training schedule. I want to work twice as hard as before." "Are you certain?" asked Kim Tae. "The current program is already pushing your limits." "I am certain," replied Valeth. These people showed me kindness when I was helpless. I will not let my weakness endanger them again. Kim Tae smiled and nodded. Very well, but understand that the advanced training will be much more difficult than anything we have done so far. I understand, said Valeth. I am ready to earn my strength back. From that day forward, Valeth approached his training with fierce determination. The humiliation of being unable to protect his friends had ignited something deep within him. He no longer trained just to regain his past glory, but to become worthy of the trust others had placed in him. The real transformation of Valeth the World Eater had begun. 1 year after the pirate attack, Valeth had become a completely different creature. His body had transformed from the bloated, helpless mass they had found in the crystal to a lean, powerful form that moved with growing grace and confidence. Your flight capabilities have improved dramatically, observed Kim Tae as he watched Valeth soar through the aerial obstacle course. You can now maintain sustained flight for over an hour. Valeth landed smoothly beside the trainer, barely breathing, hard from the exercise. His scales gleamed like polished jewels, and his eyes held a sharpness that had been missing during his early recovery. I feel alive again, said Valeth. For the first time in centuries, I remember what it means to be truly strong. Colonel Park Jin arrived from the Galactic Defense Force with new training equipment. He was a military specialist who had been assigned to assess Valeth's combat readiness. The Galactic Council wants to know if you can be trusted with your recovered abilities, explained Colonel Park Jin bluntly. They need to see that you can use your power responsibly. I understand their concerns, replied Valeth. I was once a destroyer of worlds, but I am not the same creature I was before my hibernation. The colonel set up a series of tactical scenarios designed to test both Valeth's physical abilities and his decision-making skills. The challenges required precision, restraint, and strategic thinking rather than brute force. The first test involves rescuing civilians from a burning building, explained Colonel Park Jin. You must extract them without causing additional damage to the structure. Valeth approached the simulation with careful concentration. His old instincts told him to simply tear through the building to reach the trapped people, but Kim Tae's training had taught him patience and precision, using controlled bursts of flame. Valeth melted through specific structural points to create safe passages. He moved slowly and carefully, supporting the building's weight with his body while civilians escaped through the openings he had created. Excellent technique, observed Colonel Park Jin. You showed remarkable restraint and tactical awareness. Dr. Song Mi, the research assistant, had been documenting Valeth's transformation for the Galactic Council. Her reports showed not just physical improvement, but significant changes in the dragon's personality and priorities. The creature who emerges from this training program is fundamentally different from the one who entered hibernation, she wrote in her latest report. Valeth shows empathy, patience, and genuine concern for others. These are traits that were completely absent from historical records of his species. The combat training scenarios became increasingly complex. Valeth had to navigate situations where his overwhelming strength could easily cause more harm than good. He learned to work with smaller beings, to communicate effectively during crisis situations, and to make split-second decisions that prioritize the safety of others. Your tactical thinking has improved tremendously, said Colonel Park Jin during one of their sessions. You no longer rely solely on intimidation and brute force. Kim Tae taught me that true strength comes from knowing when not to use your power, replied Valeth. A wise lesson that took me far too long to learn. The relationship between the dragon and his trainer had evolved beyond professional respect. They had become genuine friends, sharing stories and experiences during their long training sessions. Tell me about your world, asked Valeth one evening as they rested after a particularly challenging workout. Kim Tae described Earth, its diverse cultures and landscapes, the struggles and triumphs of humanity's journey to the stars. In return, Valeth shared memories of the ancient galaxy, civilizations that had existed before humanity evolved, and the lonely existence of being the last of his kind. I was so focused on being feared that I never learned to be respected, admitted Valeth. Your species has shown me there is a difference between the two. Fear is temporary, said Kim Tae. Respect must be earned through consistent actions over time. But their progress was not without challenges. News of Velith's recovery had spread throughout the galaxy, and not everyone was pleased with the dragon's transformation. There are factions within the Galactic Council who believe this experiment has gone too far, warned Dr. Choi Min during a private meeting. They think we are being naive about the dragon's true nature. What do they propose? Asked Kim Tae. Some want to terminate the program immediately, she replied. They argue that no amount of training can change what Velith fundamentally is. Velith overheard this conversation and felt a familiar darkness creeping into his thoughts. For a moment, his old instinct surfaced. He could simply destroy these critics, eliminate the threats to his freedom, but then he remembered Kim Tae's lessons about using power responsibly. He thought about the research team who had shown him kindness, and the trust they had placed in him. Let them come, he said calmly. I will prove to them that change is possible. The test came sooner than expected. A delegation from the Galactic Council arrived to conduct a formal evaluation of Velith's progress. They were led by Commander Vel, a stern military officer who had lost his homeworld to dragons during the ancient wars. I do not care how well trained this creature appears, declared Commander Vel. A predator cannot change its fundamental nature. Then test me, said Velith simply. Put me in any situation you choose. Judge me by my actions, not by my past. Commander Vel designed a series of scenarios specifically intended to trigger Velith's aggressive instincts. Mock attacks on civilian populations, threats to the dragon's own safety, and situations where violence would be the easiest solution. In each case, Velith found non-violent alternatives. He protected civilians without harming their attackers. He endured personal insults and threats without retaliation. He demonstrated a level of self-control that surprised even Kim Tae. This is very impressive, admitted Commander Vel grudgingly. But I still have concerns about what might happen if the dragon faces a genuine crisis. Then we wait, said Velith. When that crisis comes, my actions will speak louder than any words. As if summoned by his challenge, an emergency alert echoed through the research station. A massive solar flare was approaching the system, powerful enough to destroy the planet's atmosphere and kill everyone on the surface. All ships are to evacuate immediately, ordered the station commander. We have less than 6 hours before the flare reaches us. But there were problems with the evacuation. Several transport ships had mechanical failures, and there were not enough functioning vessels to carry everyone to safety. We need more time, said Dr. Park Hyen desperately. The repairs will take at least 8 hours. Commander Vel looked at Velith with sudden understanding. You could push the solar flare off course, he said quietly. Your species has the ability to manipulate stellar phenomena. It would require me to fly directly into the flare's path, replied Velith. The radiation levels would be extremely dangerous, even for me. But you could survive it, pressed Commander Vel. Velith looked at Kim Tae, who nodded encouragingly. The choice is yours, said the trainer. But I believe you already know what you want to do. Without another word, Velith launched himself into space. His powerful wings carried him toward the approaching wall of deadly radiation. Behind him, the people of the research station watched in amazement as the dragon they had once feared flew willingly into mortal danger to save them. The solar flare was like flying into the heart of a star. Velith's scales began to glow white-hot from the radiation, but he pressed on. Using techniques he had not employed for over 1,000 years, he began to manipulate the flare's magnetic field. Slowly, painfully, he deflected the massive energy wave away from the planet. The effort drained him completely, and he barely managed to return to the surface before collapsing from exhaustion. Why? Asked Commander Vel as medical teams worked to treat Velith's radiation burns. Why would you risk your life for beings you barely know? Velith's voice was weak but clear. Because Kim Tae taught me that power means nothing without purpose, and my purpose now is to protect rather than destroy. Commander Vel stared at the dragon for a long moment, then activated his communication device. "This is Commander Vel reporting to the Galactic Council," he said. "I recommend that Valeth be granted full rehabilitation status. This creature has proven beyond doubt that he can be trusted with his power." As Valeth recovered from his injuries, Kim Tae sat beside him with a smile of pride. "You have come further than I ever imagined possible," he said. "We have come far together," corrected Valeth. "But I sense our journey is only beginning." 3 years had passed since Valeth first awakened from his crystal prison. The dragon who now soared through the skies above Kepler 442b bore little resemblance to the bloated, helpless creature they had originally discovered. "Your physical capabilities have reached 85% of your historical peak," announced Kim Tae as he reviewed the latest test results. "More importantly, your mental discipline and emotional control have far exceeded anything recorded about your species." Valeth landed gracefully beside his trainer, his movements now fluid and precise. His scales shimmered with health and vitality, and his eyes held a wisdom that had not existed before his transformation. "I feel stronger than I ever was in my previous life," said Valeth. "Not just physically, but in ways I never understood before." The Galactic Council had been watching Valeth's progress with growing interest and concern. His rehabilitation had been successful beyond their wildest expectations, but success brought new challenges. "The dragon's power levels are approaching their historical maximums," reported Dr. Song-mi during the latest council session. "We must decide what to do with him. Some members still believe he should remain under constant supervision," said Council Leader Zeth. "Others argue that he has earned the right to freedom." "There is a third option," suggested Commander Vel, who had become one of Valeth's strongest supporters. "We could offer him a position working with us rather than being watched by us." The proposal was unprecedented. Never before had the Galactic Council considered partnering with a former galactic threat. But Valeth's transformation had challenged many assumptions about the nature of change and redemption. Kim Tae was consulted about the dragon's readiness for such responsibility. "He has exceeded every benchmark we set for him," the trainer reported. "But the ultimate test cannot be simulated. It must come from real circumstances." That test came sooner than anyone expected. Deep space monitoring stations detected a massive object approaching the galaxy's outer rim. Initial scans revealed it to be an asteroid field of unprecedented size, moving at incredible speed toward inhabited systems. "The object appears to be artificial," reported the lead scientist studying the phenomenon. "Our analysis suggests it is debris from an ancient weapons test, possibly from the wars that occurred during Valeth's original era. The asteroid field was enormous, containing chunks of matter the size of small moons. If it continued on its current trajectory, it would devastate dozens of inhabited worlds and kill billions of beings. Our defensive fleets cannot stop something of this magnitude," admitted Admiral Chun during the emergency session. "We need alternatives." "What about using gravitational manipulation?" suggested one scientist. "If we could alter the field's trajectory slightly, it might miss the inhabited systems." "The energy requirements would be enormous," replied another. "Expert, we would need something with the power output of a small star." All eyes turned to Valeth, who had been quietly listening to the discussions. Ancient dragons were among the few beings in the galaxy capable of manipulating objects on such a massive scale. "The technique exists," confirmed Valeth. "My ancestors used similar methods during the Great Wars, but it requires precise control and enormous expenditure of energy. One mistake could make the situation worse." "Are you willing to try?" asked Council Leader Zeth. Valeth looked at Kim Tae, who nodded encouragingly. "You have trained for this moment your entire life," said the trainer. "Not just the past 3 years, but everything that came before. Your power, your experience, and your wisdom all lead to this choice." "I will do it," said Valeth simply. "But I cannot succeed alone. I will need support from the Galactic Fleet and coordination with your best tactical minds." The mission required Valeth to fly into deep space and intercept the asteroid field while it was still far from inhabited systems. He would have only one chance to alter its course before it gained too much momentum to be stopped. The radiation levels in that region of space are extremely dangerous, warned Dr. Hanji. Even with your natural resistance, prolonged exposure could be fatal. I understand the risks, replied Valeth. But the alternative is the destruction of countless innocent lives. Kimte helped Valeth prepare for the mission, reviewing breathing techniques and energy management strategies they had practiced during training. Remember what we learned about controlled power application, said the trainer. Precision is more important than raw force. I remember everything you taught me, said Valeth. Including the most important lesson of all, which was, asked Kimte, that true strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to know when and how to use that power to protect others. The journey to intercept the asteroid field took Valeth far from any inhabited system. As he flew through the void of space, he reflected on his transformation from destroyer to protector when he finally reached the asteroid field. Its size was even more overwhelming than the reports had suggested. Chunks of ancient weapons and destroyed worlds tumbled through space in a chaotic dance of destruction. Valeth began the delicate process of gravitational manipulation, using techniques he had not employed for over 1,000 years. But now he applied them with the precision and control that Kimte had taught him. Each adjustment had to be perfect. Too much force would shatter the larger asteroids into smaller, more dangerous fragments. Too little would fail to change their trajectory enough to save the inhabited worlds for hours. Valeth worked in the deadly radiation of deep space, carefully nudging the massive objects onto a new course. His scales began to darken from radiation exposure, and his strength slowly drained away, but gradually the asteroid field began to change direction. The largest chunks shifted away from the inhabited systems, carrying the smaller debris with them. It is working, reported the monitoring stations. The field is moving away from populated space. However, one massive asteroid remained on a collision course with a system containing over 2 billion inhabitants. It was too large for Valeth to move with gravitational manipulation alone. With his energy nearly depleted, Valeth made a final desperate choice. He positioned himself directly in the asteroid's path and used his own body as an anchor point, absorbing the massive object's momentum and redirecting it through pure physical force. The impact nearly killed him. His scales cracked, his wings were battered, and his body was driven far off course by the collision. But the asteroid was deflected away from the inhabited system. Rescue ships found Valeth floating unconscious in space, his body badly damaged but alive. As he recovered in the medical facility, news of his sacrifice spread throughout the galaxy. The dragon who once destroyed worlds has now saved billions of lives, reported the galactic news networks. Valeth the World Eater has become Valeth, the World Saver. When Valeth finally awakened, he found Kimte sitting beside his medical bed. How do you feel? Asked the trainer. Different, replied Valeth honestly. For the first time in my existence, I feel truly at peace with who I am. The Galactic Council's decision was unanimous. Valeth was offered a position as a protector of the galaxy, working with defense forces to handle threats too large for conventional military responses. We would be honored to have you serve alongside us, said Council Leader Zeth. Not as a reformed criminal, but as a trusted guardian. Valeth accepted the position, but with one condition. I want Kimte to help establish training programs for other ancient beings who might be discovered in the future, he said. What he accomplished with me could be possible for others. Kimte smiled and agreed. Every being deserves a chance at redemption, he said. We have proven that change is possible even for those who seem beyond hope. Months later, Kimte stood in a new training facility, preparing to work with another recently awakened ancient being. This time it was a massive stone creature that had been sleeping beneath an ocean for thousands of years. Are you ready to begin? Asked Kimte as the creature looked at him with suspicious eyes. I suppose, rumbled the stone being, though I doubt a tiny human can teach someone like me anything useful. A familiar shadow passed overhead as Valeth landed beside them. The dragon's presence had become a source of comfort and inspiration for newly awakened ancients. "I once said the same thing," Valeth told the stone creature with amusement. "This human will surprise you in ways you cannot imagine." "You really think this training can work for anyone?" asked the stone being doubtfully. Valeth looked at Kim Tae with deep respect and gratitude. 3 years ago, I was a bloated, helpless creature who could barely move. Today, I am stronger than I have ever been, not just in body, but in spirit. If this human can transform me, he can transform anyone. Willing to try? Kim Tae picked up his training equipment and smiled at his new student. "Let us start with some basic movement exercises," he said. "Everyone begins somewhere, and every journey starts with a single step." As the training session began, Valeth watched from nearby. He had become more than just a success story. He was living proof that even the most feared and destructive beings could find redemption through patience, hard work, and the guidance of someone who believed in the possibility of change. The ancient dragon who had once terrorized galaxies now spent his days protecting them, working alongside the species he had previously hunted. It was a transformation that had seemed impossible just a few years earlier, but Kim Tae had shown that impossible was just another word for untested. With the right approach, the right attitude, and enough determination, any being could overcome their past and build a better future. The galaxy was safer now, not because its greatest threat had been eliminated, but because that threat had chosen to become its greatest protector. And in training facilities across known space, other ancient beings were beginning their own journeys toward redemption, guided by human trainers who had learned that true strength came not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to build something better. Valeth's story had become legend, but more importantly, it had become hope. Hope that change was possible, that redemption could be earned, and that even the darkest past could give way to a brighter future. The World Eater had become the world saver, and his transformation would inspire countless others to believe that they too could change, grow, and become something greater than they had ever imagined possible.